Kelly, welcome. We're super excited to have you on board,
Thank
and I feel like want to take just a moment to get to know you.
Sure. There are a few, people would probably argue. To me, if people were in town, I'd probably take them to Terry Black's. I think it's one of the best. Franklin Barbecue is probably the most famous because it's been on the Food Network and all of that. It used to be a food truck that had a line around the building. Now I think they actually have a brick and mortar. But it's still only open for lunch. When they run out of meat, they run out of meat. It's great. And then like for just any standard Tuesday, I like Salt Lick or Rudy's. So there's a lot of great barbecue here. So I have a 15-year-old boy, a 13-year-old boy, and an 11-year-old girl. And they are all awesome, like really sweet, well-rounded, smart kids, but they are also big athletes. And so I sort of live and die by their sports. And it dictates a lot of my schedule, certainly in the evenings and my travel and things like that. But in fact, my 13-year-old has a football game tonight. My 15-year-old is a sophomore, just got pulled up to varsity. And so we're having a big time in this house. But we do football, we do baseball, we do volleyball, and we do horse. My daughter's an equestrian, like English rider. My favorite one to watch is football by far. We watch a lot of football in my house. Only Fridays and Saturdays. I don't do Sunday football. I have zero interest in the NFL, but I love college football. I love high school football. We have a dog. I'm looking at him. He's asleep on the couch right there. His name is Big Time. He's a Boston Terrier. An Aggie for sure. I love Harvard, and I'm super proud I went there. But yeah, the cult following is certainly in the traditions of Texas A&M. They won this weekend, which was good after a disaster against Miami last week. But yes, I'm a diehard Aggie fan, and we try to get up to at least 1 or 2 games a season. Probably something to do with my kids. That my kids are well-mannered, or my kids are respectful, or my kids are well-behaved, or that they trust their kid with my kid, things like that. So I think that means that hopefully Jim and I are doing something right, and raising good humans, and not just good kids, but actually people who will grow up to make some sort of positive impact. So I'm the president of an organization called Empowering Women as Leaders. It's an organization just over the Austin chapter, though it's a national organization, and we place low income, sort of high risk, but above average age women who are going back to college. We provide scholarships, networking, and mentoring. And so we partner in Austin with Texas State University, and we find women who fit that bill. Some of them tend to be single moms, maybe, who couldn't, when they got out of high school, couldn't put it together to get to school. And so now they've sort of raised some money to go back. Some of them are former military, people who enlisted right out of high school. And so we've just been going. I stood up the Austin chapter 2 years ago. For 1 hour, I tend to probably binge watch my terrible shows. I just watched the first 2 episodes of The Morning Show that just came back, the new season. I'm watching the last 2 episodes because I was a few days behind on Only Murders in the Building. And then what did I just finish? I watched season 1. Oh, I watched season 1 of Suits and season 1 of Lincoln Lawyer. Oh, I wear a lot of black. And I'm not like a dark person, but I tend to wear a lot of black just because I feel like I can wear fun shoes or wear fun jewelry or something with black. But I also tend to, and I think it works over Zoom, because I can take like a plain black t-shirt, throw a necklace on over Zoom, and it looks dressy, even though it's just like an old t-shirt. So black works well for that. I also wear a lot of color. So you'll see me like in like hot pink. I have hot pink pants, and I have yellow pants, and I have green pants, and I wear a lot of bright colors too, but black is probably my go-to. I wasn't, I went through the conversations with all of them. I wasn't looking to leave my role at Haiku, um, and I wouldn't have left for a lot of things. But when I came across Demand Base, John Eitel had broached me about the role, and I was really moved by it because I was so familiar. I mean, I'm a marketer, so of course I have gone through the ABM and data RFP process 100 times at various companies. And so I was certainly familiar with Demand Base. I was familiar with 6sense. I'm familiar with ZoomInfo, and the space that they're playing. And I follow all of them to kind of see how they're coming at the market differently. And I just saw an opportunity. I mean, ABM is big. People want to get smarter. We don't have dollars to burn. Every marketing budget is cut down to nothing. So how can you work as hard as possible with the dollars that you have? It's by targeting better. AI is the future, and I think everything in the world of MarTech is going to go in the direction of AI. I think Demand Base is really the pioneer in that space, and I think has a great product roadmap. If we can, execute against that, and we can make sure the market knows about it, I think the TAM is massive. I think the amount of companies that are using ABM as compared to the total TAM of the market is probably fairly small. I think the last number I saw was like 70%. So there's lots of white space even in a crowded market. So I just think the opportunity is huge, and I love being a consumer of my own product. We talk a lot about, I don't even know what the phrase work-life balance means anymore, but we do talk about like we are whole people. We are not robot workers, right? Like we have a life outside. Our life outside influences the way that we operate during the day. And so I use those as kind of the 5 to 9 p.m. influences my 9 to 5, my 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Because my time, my joy and happiness in life comes from my family and from my faith and football and sort of all the things that happen a lot outside of work. And I think they hopefully make me a better leader inside work. One, hopefully it makes me more empathetic towards the people that I work with. But hopefully they also, make me, understanding and supportive and collaborative, and all the things that I have to learn from raising kids. I get to hopefully practice in the office too. CPG is really the best training ground in the world for marketers, because you just learn, like it's not marketing, it's actual like P&L management of a brand. And so like I owned like the Chips Ahoy brand. And that means that you're influencing everything that affects that P&L, whether it's packaging, like manufacturing, whether it's obviously the formula of the cookies, and if you're going to remove chocolate chips or not, and then of course the packaging and the advertising and the end caps and 2 for $5 and all the things that you're running. And I just loved it. And so it was a fun time. The best part about it was managing cookies. So people buy endless amounts of cookies. There's no sort of like cap on how much cookies you can buy. Whereas like there's a cap on how much milk you're going to buy because of like fixed amount of consumption, but cookies people can eat endlessly. And they do. And so I loved cookies. Cottage cheese was a little different. I wasn't a cottage cheese eater. And then I got pregnant while I was managing cottage cheese. And so I was like 5 weeks along when I had to go on a plant tour. And I threw up right in the corner of the plant because I was like, I'd curdled cheese and I was nauseous, and I was like, this is the worst. So I hated cottage cheese. I had other people do my tastings for me. I couldn't even do it. But anyway, so back to your question, cookies, Chips Ahoy for sure, I think. We did this whole like kind of comparison to like the Coke and Pepsi taste test of like, if you were blind, because people are so, they are so like dominated by brand perception, right? I have this belief that brands are a surrogate quality, like especially in the absence of product knowledge, like they're a surrogate for quality. So people don't know any better. They just assume Intel is better. So it was an Intel versus AMD taste test. And the assumption is because Intel markets, it's an ingredient brand, right? You're talking about a processor inside a computer, but Intel brought ingredient branding to the surface with their Intel Inside campaign. So they made it to where Intel Inside all of a sudden was like, it was like some component of it made this computer better, right? Just like I don't know. Anyway, there's a bunch of different brands that do great things with ingredients that make it worthwhile. And so we did this thing and kind of said, hey, if it was blind, if you weren't sort of like influenced by the intel inside, which of these worked better? And it's been so long, I can't remember the results, but I do remember exactly. But I do remember that AMD won on those taste tests. Because people didn't know any better. And when they ran their computers, the processing was faster and better. And so it took like, I mean, it, now AMD has like taken over. They've taken a ton of share from Intel. Their stock has gone up, 1,000,000% since I was there. Of course, I sold at $1.80, but that's beside the point. But they went up to, $150 last year or something. And it's because they finally were able to market past that performance and be not so dominated by the Intel inside campaign. In Texas, there's a brand called Buc-ee's. Have you all ever heard of this? It's Buccee', I think.
Oh, okay.
And it sounds silly, but it is a gigantic gas station. Like we're talking like 150 gas pumps, like massive, but it doesn't allow big trucks. So there's no trucks allowed. It's only people. And it has like 150 bathrooms inside, and their whole marketing was on clean restrooms, because that's really all you want on a road trip, right? Is to stop somewhere with clean bathrooms.
Yeah.
And then if you happen to go in there and they have amazing fudge and amazing jerky and amazing barbecue and amazing everything else, then you kind of stay and you spend. I've never left a Buc-ee's. I stopped to go to the bathroom and I spend $30 before I walk out the door. Like it's so good. But so now they're all over Texas, but they're on these major thoroughfares on the highway.
Okay.
And they run this advertising. There's these, there's billboards all over town, and it'll be like, all over the state. And the billboard will be like, be ready for Buc-ee's 69 miles down the road. And you're like, but people will hold it for 69 miles to go to the bathroom at the clean bathroom of Buc-ee's. And so as long as you know that Buc-ee's coming, you're going to kind of pass 150 gas stations between here. Okay. But anyways, but they do this super clever marketing. They play on like clever things about the meat and clever things on songs that are popular and all kinds of stuff. And they just basically through billboards. I don't think they advertise any other way, but everybody in Texas knows Buc-ee's. And I even saw an article about them that was like in the Wall Street Journal or New York Times or something recently, because they've made such a stink here. But anyways, they're one of my favorite brands. I will say decisive. I do make decisions quickly. Gosh, I'm trying to think of what the adjective is to describe. I am perfectly fine being wrong. So I don't know what that is. I wouldn't call me humble. I'm kind of cocky, so I'm not really humble, but I'm confident. My son always says confident, not cocky, about himself. That's probably a good thing. I do have confidence in my decision making, but I'm perfectly happy being wrong. So I have no problem having a good debate and a good argument. I do like to make decisions quickly, but I'm happy to like make one and then be like, that was the wrong answer. Like, let's pivot, or say, hey guys, this is what I'm thinking about deciding. What do y'all think? Gartner MQ, like hands down. And I know that we have a big sponsorship Forrester, because I just exchanged notes with John about that last week. But yeah, I guess because I used to work at Gartner. And so, we used to worry about like Forrester or IDC or some of these other eval companies, research companies and things. And we would look, and if you add up, not that this correlates necessarily to Mindshare, but if you add up Forrester plus IDC plus, I don't even know all the companies now, but all the companies that are in that sort of research ranking advisory space, all of them combined are like the size of 10% of Gartner. Like they're a fraction. They don't represent anything in the grand scheme of revenue. Mm-hmm. Like I said, Mindshare may not be as exact, but I think Gartner carries more weight. Plus, I believe that and I also know I'm very familiar with how much of a firewall there is at Gartner between the pay to play, like there isn't any. And so like the people who are putting you in a magic quadrant have zero overlap with the people who, we hire for research purposes or for analyst reports and things like that. And so they sit, so I trust that it's very authentic, realistic. I don't know if the same is true at Forrester and those kind of companies. They might be, I just don't know it as well. But I do know it's true at Gartner, which is another reason I trust it. My only rule on failure is I have no problem No, I do have a problem failing. That would be a lie. My only rule on it is to fail forward and fail fast. So figure out quickly that it's not going to work and course correct, and then learn from it so that you're failing forward so you don't repeat the same mistakes. So I took a sabbatical 2 years ago, 6 months. And I took it off because I made a bad decision. So my whole career, I'll just give my quick and dirty. My whole career, I've never applied for a job. I've kind of just like been really, really fortunate to work with really awesome people and built great relationships that when they went to another company, they would sort of call me or take me with them. And it's been all different people at every single role, but I've just, one of my former coworkers used to call it pebbles in her pocket, like the people that you take with you from place to place. And so I just got to be pebbles in a lot of people's pockets, that they took me along for the ride. And so I was batting sort of 1,000, like on ones that I had where I had landed in opportunities and growth and progression in my career, except for my last one, like 2 years ago. And so a friend of mine from Rackspace had asked me to come over to take a job at this technology staffing company she was working for. And every red flag in the book came up during my interview process. I wasn't interested in leaving Gartner. I had loved my job at Gartner, but for some reason if you can think of anything that came up in the job interview process that would tell you, no, 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 don't do it. They all came up. So I had every intention of declining the job. And then they offered me the job, and I'll be real frank, they offered me twice as much as I was making, and it was fully remote. And this was like 2021. And my company, Gartner, was just talking about the return to the office. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm not ready for that yet. Now I'm better. But at the time, it was like so jarring from being at home fully. I just wasn't ready for that kind of transition at that moment, and the age of my kids and things. And then this money. And I was like, I hate making a decision based on money, but I can also, if I do it for a year and I hate it, I could take a year off and be equal and be the same financially. Like, so I was like, gosh, what do I have to lose? It was going to be my first L1 CMO job where I reported to the CEO. And so I was like, I want to be at that table. I want to be decision making. And I was just naive enough to believe that my sort of positive charm and charisma could somehow like change all these red flags. It wasn't. And so anyway, I was there about 5 months, and I knew the very first day at 9 a.m. in my first meeting that I had made a horrible mistake. And so when I reflect back, like there's so many stories from those 5 months, but when I reflect back, what I just realized is that like I failed in discernment. I failed in trusting my gut. I failed in sort of reading like the tea leaves of where this company was going. I think I failed in like flattery. Like I failed in, they wanted me for the job so bad that I sort of somehow convinced myself that meant I wanted it too. Like I sort of bought into their hype. And anyway, there's a whole long list of ways that I failed, but the takeaway was at the end of it that it bought me a glorious 6-month sabbatical, which was amazing. It gave me to sit and put my thoughts to paper and write 2 books. One of them's coming out. The other one will be later. And so there was like some beautiful blessings that came out of it. And some things I learned that I'll never do again. And that's what failure's about. Give me context. Don't tell me what I want to hear. Don't tell me like just the shiny exterior, like give me the real context. Because I recognize sometimes numbers are bad and you're like, well, let's explain why. Let me talk about where they came from. What was the history? Why did we make this decision? Why were we structured this way? Why do we run this program? Where did this messaging originate? And so give me that context. I think that's super helpful. Bring me into as many conversations as possible. Pull me into any meetings that you think are relevant. Send me summaries, from meetings that you think are relevant or from conversations. I don't know if first 2 weeks is the time necessarily where we'll talk about career development, though I think those conversations are super important. Once we sort of settle into, I want to get to know you all as people, and I want to get to understand the organization and the performance and the data and the history. And then we'll kind of dive into kind of, you and your roles and where you come from and what you're great at and what you want to be when you grow up and all those kind of things, and see if we can help combine what Demandbase needs with what you're passionate about and do something great.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And we look forward to working with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Can't wait to start.